Good evening. It is now 6 p.m. and welcome to the Community Development Committee meeting. I'm the Chair, Louis Washington. Today's meeting is being recorded and will be available on the city's website. Thank you for joining us. We'll start with a roll call. Councilmember Watton,
Here.
yourself, Councilmember Johnson, City Clerk here, Madam Mayor is here, City Administrator, and City Attorney Burke is here. We also have the Director here, Director Davis. Okay. So now we move to our first item of regular business, which is to approve the agenda. Any questions on the agenda? Okay, if there are no questions on the agenda, we'll consider it approved. The next portion of our meeting is public comment. I don't see anyone here in City Hall for public comment. So if there's no public comment, we'll close public comment. Okay. We now move to our next agenda item, which is approval of the minutes dated, I believe, October 6th. Correct? October 6th. Any questions regarding the the meeting minutes from October 6th? Okay. We'll approve the minutes. Computer glitch here. Okay, so that brings us to our next agenda item, which is the discussion. And I will go ahead and turn over our meeting at this point to Director Davis and allow her to introduce our next item.
Okay, thank you, Chair Washington, and good evening, council members and mayor. So this critical areas ordinance, I opened this up for discussion tonight after Chair Washington and I had our check-in meeting last week at his request. We're bringing this to the regular council committee at our next regular meeting on November 3rd, I believe it is. And so I just wanted to be able to open this up for discussion tonight, just to kind of give you a brief overview and a summary of the changes and kind of where we left off. It's mostly just to help answer any questions that you might have before we have our formal meeting in the next committee meeting. I did provide you with an updated the Planning Commission's recommendation, first of all, which was a little different than what staff's recommendation was to the Planning Commission. I put the track changes in there just to remind you, we had brought this before the Planning Commission last December of 2024. They made a recommendation of approval. After that meeting, the city received comments from Fish and Wildlife as well as the Department of Ecology. And then there was further discussion around wetland buffers, the floodplain elevation, and the number of feet above the baseboard height. And so we kind of regrouped. We put a pause on this. We went back to our critical areas consultant, Jeff Gray from OTAC, and he will be at the next meeting to give more of a formal presentation and provide some maps. So we've got some visuals to look at during that meeting. But I did put a red line in there of the changes. And I also will have a memo that provides the best available science review. The one thing that differed once we took this to the Planning Commission is we had recommended, in some cases, the buffers extended over, wetland buffers extended over already developed lots and encumbered the entire lot. And so that made it pretty onerous on people that had bought their property with the understanding that their backyard was outside of a buffer, that the buffer edge was essentially at the back of their fence line, which would now, with the increase in buffers, expand over their entire lot. And so the Planning Commission had felt like that was pretty onerous on people if they wanted to like add a little storage shed or they wanted to add on to their deck or put in a patio, that there should be some consolation there since when they purchased their lot, there was not that restriction. And so we worked with Fish and Wildlife, had the conversations, and we agreed that, for developed lots that had already been platted and built under the master plan development up at Snoqualmie Ridge, that those lots could be given like a little extra latitude, like to develop up to 250 square feet to, maybe do a small addition to their house or add a little something in the buffer without having to go out and have a full-blown critical area study. And so we talked about this in our planning commission meeting, and they felt like maybe that wasn't enough because 250 square feet was not that large of an area. Most of them measured their decks on their back behind their house and said they were over 250 square feet. So they had recommended that we increase that amount to 500 square feet. So we do not have Fish and Wildlife's approval on that increase. But this is what the Planning Commission had recommended. So I put their recommendation in your packet. I also added the red lines. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to review that yet. We did keep the flood elevation we didn't make any changes to that. We kept it at the 1 foot. Because King County is hoping to have grant funding to come in next year and reevaluate our floodplain and then possibly do a letter of map revision. So we just left that alone for now, and Fish and Wildlife was fine with that. So Jeff at OTAC has prepared like a best available science memo, and then he's also got a summary of changes since we brought this to you last December. So I'm happy to kind of run through those, but the gist of it is mostly around the wetland buffer increasing and adding that exception. But if you'd like to talk through it tonight or talk through the Planning Commission's recommendation, I'm just happy to answer any questions ahead of next week's meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. Councilmember Watton.
This is for Attorney Burke, and that is, what is the risk to the city if we don't have prior approval from Fish and Wildlife of going from 250 square feet to 500?
I mean, yeah, thank you. That's a good question. I think there definitely are concerns with going to the 500 from a legal risk of, a third party group could, challenge this. And so, I have concerns.
Follow-up question, and
follow-up.
that is, how soon do we need to make any sort of change? I mean, is there any constraints with critical areas in the state of Washington of having something in place?
So we were supposed to have our critical areas ordinance done last year when we adopted our comprehensive plan periodic update, but they allowed cities an extra year. So they gave you an extension to update your code. So we basically have until December 31st of this year to complete that.
Okay, thank you.
So we have to have the ordinance in place by December 31st of this year. Is that correct,
Yes,
Director? Okay.
yes,
So
to
that
be in
means
compliance with GMA, yeah.
the first and second reading through council and ready to go.
Yes, so I have that scheduled to come back to the committee meeting on November 3rd and then to go to council for first reading on November 10th and second reading on the 24th.
Excellent. Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate the Planning Commission's concern over that issue. And I think it's well within their scope to consider all things related to that. I think that my concern would definitely be with the issue of the best available science. And that is what this ordinance is supposed to be based on. And I'm not aware of a best available science or corroboration thereof that leads to the 500 square feet. So I think that it might be in our best interest to go with the 250. We know that is supposed to count according to Fish and Wildlife and our consultant.
Did you have a comment to that, Director?
No, I think that's supportive of Fish and Wildlife. of course, would have preferred that we just kept the full buffers, but they were also very understanding of the fact that we had a lot of public testimony at the planning commission and that this would create, extra hardships on some of our residents that wanted to do very minor things in their backyard that were now encumbered by a buffer that hadn't been according to the plat. So Fish and Wildlife, they were fine with it. They said we could accept that. And we do have a letter of approval from them with that 250 foot,
Meaning that they were fine with the 250 feet.
the 250
500
square
feet.
foot.
Okay.
Yes, yes. We did not talk with them through the 500 square feet. So if the council committee recommended that we agree with the planning commission's recommendation of 500 square feet, I would suggest that we go back and let Fish and Wildlife weigh in on that.
Okay.
Because we do have a letter of recommendation from them, but it will be in your packet, but it's not for the 500 square feet.
Councilmember Wadden.
Yeah, if sometimes you have to pick your battles, and mine would be retaining the 1 foot above floodplain and 250 feet with the idea is that we can continue to approach Fish and Wildlife for a variance to 200 or to 500. But given the time constraint, I'd rather have something in place and be in compliance than out of compliance. Legal risk.
There would be mechanisms for if somebody wanted to do over the 250 square feet, they would just have to hire a wetlands biologist and have a study done and then possibly do some mitigation to, for those extra impacts. So it doesn't necessarily prohibit people from being able to improve their property. This just allows them to do a little bit without having to go out and spend the money on a biologist to provide that report.
Right.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, I believe that the intent is that this will come back to us anyway in the future for another revision once the letter of revision process is completed. So we can look at the raising from 1 feet to 2 feet or whatever it is that comes out of that. I don't know because we don't have a letter of map revision, but I think that the intent was that this is going to come back to us at some point after that anyway. So it could be something where we go, okay, we're supposed to adopt this by the end of the year and we have a question around the 500 feet and perhaps that could get rolled into that future discussion that the planning commission has once we have the letter of map revision. But that at this point, since we're supposed to do this at the end of the year, and this isn't something that's been rushed, the planning commission put an awful lot of time into this, and we're talking about adopting everything else, that I think that I'd feel comfortable moving forward with it as is, and then with the 250, and then the planning commission can then, and staff can also request from Fish and Wildlife, hey, what do you think about 500? Would that be okay if we did that extension at the appropriate time when this comes back to us in the future?
From a legal standpoint, City Attorney Burke, is there any great risks there with Councilmember Johnson's potential plan?
I mean, I think given the options, it's probably one of the safer ones.
Yeah. The worst thing they'll say is no.
Councilmember Wadden?
Oh, I'm good with moving on.
Okay, okay. So I think that next steps is having, when we have our next CD committee meeting, is formally having the discussion to amend to the 250 feet.
I think we could do that now. Good.
No, I'm comfortable now.
If we did that now, could we potentially move it to our next council meeting?
I don't think so, because I think that would require an amendment to the packet. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dina. But if we amended the packet, I
So-
don't think it would give us enough time to get it to the next council meeting.
I don't know how much time you need to change the packet, but if we have clear direction from the committee, we could change it. If you think we could change it by Thursday for Madam Clerk.
That is the only change is the 500 to 250.
My only reservation with that is that I have asked Jeff Gray with the OTAC to be at our CD committee on November 3rd and bring
Okay.
in maps to better show, because that's one thing that tripped us up a little bit, I think, at the planning commission, is I thought he was coming prepared with a presentation and then he didn't, we had a disconnect there. So I think it would be helpful to maybe hear from him.
Okay. That would be the third or
November
fourth,
3rd.
November
Or
3rd,
four, I think it's the 3rd.
our next CD meeting. Okay.
Mhm.
And that still gives us the two council meetings in November for the first reading and the second
Yes, the
reading.
10th and the 24th.
Okay, and then we have that, I'm just saying, we have that additional council meeting in
Yeah.
November, so we would be fine. Councilmember Johnson.
Okay, now I got nervous when you mentioned maps. Because some of us remember when there were maps before, that were showing where the streams were in the city and what type, but that wasn't based on a particularly scientific analysis. It was kind of like here's kind of a best guess from Google Maps, plus the expertise and experience of someone looking at it. I would hope that we don't end up going down that road again, where council members get confused and start thinking, oh, this is the map. These have been officially mapped, unless that work has in fact actually been done. Someone walked down the streams, actually categorized them.
I
appropriately.
believe he did go back and look at a couple of them that were questionable.
Okay, so maybe the most controversial ones, then
Yes.
we could actually feel confident, because what happened before was that was kind of a best guess and didn't really have, it led to, I think, confusion from the planning commission too about what exactly was they were supposed to be doing. Were they adopting this as the map, which wasn't the intent then? Is the intent now to have an actual map that we adopt? Or is this again supposed to just be kind of guidance to us?
It's supposed to be guidance.
Okay,
So
that was my understanding.
many of the streams were, even with the increased buffer, they were still within the wetland buffer protected area up on the ridge of the open space. But there were a couple of them that we were a little unclear on, and I think he did go out and do a field analysis. I will confirm that with him.
So the intent, sorry, Chair.
Oh, please.
So the intent of my understanding of what the planning commission had done, and then what we will do as council, is that we are supposed to look at, here's the best available science for these categories of streams, whether we have any in our city or not. It could be that we have 50 class 1 streams. It could be that we have 0 class 1 streams. But if there is a class 1 stream, the best available science is that you're supposed to do this much buffer. And that what my understanding is that we're not supposed to do is go, oh, there's a class 1 stream there. Now let's change what our policy is, because this is going to affect people in a certain way. Whereas it's supposed to be, well, science says this, so you adopt it regardless. So I just, I get nervous when people see things and go, oh no, that's going to affect people, when that isn't really the question. The question is about
Best
the
available
best available
science. Yeah.
It's a good point.
I don't know if city attorney had any thoughts on that or not. Okay,
I think we're on a good path legally.
great, thank you.
Councilmember Watton, did you have
I'm good. Thank you. Okay.
it finally came back on.
Okay, good.
Okay, sounds good. Let's see here. Okay, all right.
Oh, one last thing real quick.
So before we close out, one more point.
I just want to say that this was a lot of work for our staff and for the planning commission and for for our consultant. So I'm just very thankful to all that work that was done. Get this to us.
I'm excited to move forward with the agenda item as well, so. So if no further questions on the critical areas piece, then we'll move forward with is there an affordable housing funding presentation today?
No presentation today. Again, it was more of a discussion since we left off from our last meeting. I know Mike and I have been looking at various things, and Dina Burke also took the questions that she heard expressed from the council committee at the last meeting, and she compiled a memo today, which I handed out to you tonight because I felt like you may not have had an opportunity to see it in your route here tonight, so. But
Thank you,
that
Director.
basically answered some of the questions that came up in the last meeting.
So Chair, this is kind of a tag team. So Dina handled that section. Uh, I did a deep dive since we talked because I was trying to find someone to do that presentation. We've reached out to some people. We haven't heard back from them yet.
Okay,
But I went far and wide,
okay.
a far and wide ranging thing. And I went down rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole. One of the rabbit holes I printed out and handed to you folks. King County
County.
did a report on workplace housing that I think is a very valuable, comprehensive report and worth a good read. During my searches, I stumbled across Washington's Department of Commerce's local government survey findings, and the state has. Mona, jump in anytime and tell me I'm all wrong, but it seems like to me that the state has been building tools which they wish municipalities use to address the situation. And they build a tool and they put it out.
Mhm.
But I think what's missing is the instructions oftentimes on how you use that tool to fix the car.
Mhm.
Sorry, Public Works. I'm going to use that analogy.
I think it's a good analogy.
So
Fix the lift station.
we tried not to talk about those.
Oh,
So this survey that they conducted, Burke Consulting actually conducted the survey in 2024. And I was quite surprised when I reviewed it, and I printed out its page, and I actually went down to Mona and I said, "Is this true?" And she goes, "Yeah, it is." So the state has identified 10 tools that they have put in place
Mm.
to try to encourage affordable housing projects. And so what Burke did was they looked, this is just one component of the big legislative report,
Mhm.
but they went through every municipality in the state and graded them on how many of those 10 things were deployed. Snoqualmie has deployed 1 of the 10. Now, some of these we're not ready to deploy. We have a zoning plan
Mhm.
we need to do next year before we can do some of these things.
Absolutely.
Some of these require targeted properties to deploy, but there are a few things here that we can focus on, that the state does want us to enact, that we can go through the legislative process, have the public discussion, and look at possibly deploying some of these things. Some of them are reduced parking requirements. The state really wants us to reduce parking requirements for affordable housing projects. That's a discussion we need to have. It's possibly a code amendment we need to deploy. Alternative development standards for tiny homes, et cetera. That's a discussion I think we had a little bit of, but I think we need to wrap it up and decide whether or not we're going to take action. Permit fee reductions for these type projects, impact fee reductions for these type projects. These are the things that we can concentrate on now and start working on now, to make us more ready when the time when those other opportunities which are maturing up present themselves. So that's my part. I'll throw it to either one of you two to jump in.
Well, I want to start by saying thank you very much, City Administrator, for the deep dive into this. And first time I've seen it, but looks, like, yeah, there's some good material and good stuff in here. So I'm definitely looking to deep diving into it. Are there any questions around the memo? I don't, we haven't really had a chance to dive into it, but the memo from City Attorney Burke. If you want to maybe take a look at that, and we'll circle back next committee meeting if there are questions. Okay. And you can also email City Attorney Burke directly with questions. So, this, I guess, my only question, I mean, there's a lot of information there, my city administrator. Um, looking to you and, Director Davis, what would be the most reasonable way to approach it? Is this something that we want to continue with the FAQs? Are there certain sections that we want to pick that maybe we want to tackle as a committee? City Administrator?
So I would recommend working in parallel.
Okay.
We don't necessarily have to do one thing at a time. We do need to answer those FAQs.
Okay.
That is critical information for us
Mhm.
in order to, it's really the map on how to, or the blueprint to build the house. So we definitely need to work on answering those FAQs, whether we do it at this level or we take it to the full council in the future. However we do that, we have got to answer those questions.
Okay.
But I also encourage us to work on some of the low-hanging fruit that the Department of Commerce identified. And I'm not saying let's adopt these things. I'm not saying let's not adopt these things, but let's at least have the conversation and examine it and make a decision so we know going forward where that's at.
Okay. Councilmember Johnson?
I'm trying to remember how to get through a giant text like this and find the exact thing I'm looking for. I'm not finding it in the table of contents. Is there-
Index.
Yeah. Is there just like a very short like list of where those 10 things are, or are they kind of sprinkled through?
They're
I
not
just
in
didn't
that
see.
report.
Okay, they're not in this one.
I'm sorry. They are in the state housing advisory plan for 2023 to 2028.
Okay.
I
I'm
can
looking at the
email
wrong one.
them to you.
Please.
Specifically,
Okay.
it's Appendix C of that report.
Okay.
And this is
Yeah, that
the,
makes you feel a little bit better.
I apologize. This is the group, I told you I went far and wide. This is the group that makes recommendations to the legislature on how to build the tools.
Excellent.
So I
Thank
will
you.
email this out to you all.
Okay.
Great.
That would be very helpful.
I also provided a Housing 101 packet of material to you that PSRC provided that I thought might be helpful. We were looking for ways that maybe we could have somebody come and talk to us about how other small cities are navigating all the things, that are required for affordable housing and, the subsidies that are expected that come with that. And so in my research, in tandem with Mike, I thought the Housing 101 manual might provide a little bit of information to kind of shed a light on what we're dealing with here too. So
Councilmember Johnson?
Watton?
I'm sorry, Councilmember Watton?
We just swapped roles.
I still
I'll
am.
try to channel.
I still am
Councilmember
on
Johnson.
prescription
Guided the
medication.
Columbo.
I think one thing that's important to point out and just as we go through the considerations and as pointed out also in the regional workforce housing initiative that we have here, there is a disconnect. There is, and it says in the report, in 2023, countywide median rent for studios, 1 and 2 bedroom units was affordable to households earning 50% or less. But there's a oversupply. It points out there's an oversupply of studio and 1 bedroom units and experiencing higher vacancy rates than 2 and 3 bedroom units. But I think the point is this, we know that in our community, 80% of our workers commutes in. And that's what we're trying to bridge the gap on. So what's in this report may not be exactly what is applicable to us because we may find that those studio and 1 bedroom units we have a shortage of. And I don't know how to, determine that, but there is an oversupply of certain types, and there's a competing line, because as you look at uh, AMI and how it's grown over the last couple of years, it was a challenge a couple of years ago. Now market rates are actually undercutting what AMI is saying should be supported. So I think we need to be mindful moving forward that we are filling the right gaps, and I think going back out to our employers, especially the hospital, the casino, and some other and the school district, is really those that are not living here, what types of housing would they like to see? And the other one is home ownership too, and that would be under the model that two organizations use in King County that I'm aware of, and one is Habitat for Humanity, where the land is actually owned by the nonprofit, and they're buying the house, and it's like in permanent affordability sort of status going forward. So keeping that in mind. And then the last, and that's the outliers that we need to address, and that's senior housing, veteran housing, and those with special needs. And that would include, we did get some input from one organization that deals with special needs adults. And I think however we can determine, where the need is greatest is going to be helpful in guiding forward. And we all know that we only have so much land
Right.
to go around. So where we place those people and address that, that's going to be really critical.
And I'll just add in the other piece that, from our last presentation, uh, the memo, or is it the memo that we have regarding some of the funding that, it can only be utilized for certain, special categories. So that's the other piece of it as well that we need to ensure. And I think you brought up the senior community and senior housing, but making sure that we're targeting some of those categories as well, because we're limited what we can do with the funding as well.
And I mean,
Oh, no, please,
At-
please go ahead.
at the 30% AMI, that works well with the seniors that are relying on Social Security, and they're probably at the most risk of being displaced from our community, because we just simply don't have a number of options. You look at our demographics, and our demographics are far underneath the general demographics of King County. So that's another valuable place. And currently there's only about 68 units of senior housing between the two cities. We have 0. So, right sizing it, we might be talking about 25 units or something that would make a sizable difference.
Councilmember Johnson 2.0. Did you have a question?
I just reflecting on something that Councilmember Watson was talking about, the idea that there isn't sort of a one size that fits all. So yeah, it does make things very challenging, but just keeping in mind that we have that requirement with regard to adding a bunch of stock at the 30% AMI level, that could lean us a little bit more toward favoring smaller units. Move that. At least when we look at our zoning, such that we can have a plan that says, hey, specifically, we can do this. Maybe with the few lots that we know that we do have that could be developed, maybe not necessarily focusing there yet, but just saying that, yeah, 30% AMI is probably going to lean towards smaller units as an average.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd add with 30%, that we would have to also consider services.
Yeah.
So some pretty robust services, keeping in mind our community that we're, don't have a lot of bus routes here and, transportation's difficult. So those are some other things, some other challenges that we would face with a lower AMI population. City, Councilmember Johnson?
Yeah, I think at this point, we just have some homework and some reading assignments.
A lot of reading. City Administrator, did you have anything to add?
Oh, welcome to how I spent my last week.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for
Wow.
doing the digging of find this much needed information. We appreciate it. Director, any other pearls to add?
No, that's pretty much all I had. I'd be interested to know, like, in your minds, what you think are the next steps to coming back and talking about affordable housing, like where we should go from here. Would you like me to try to find somebody to come in and talk to us? Would you like me to try to do more comparisons or gather specific information around what we have, what we need?
Yeah, I was talking to Councilmember Wadden or Johnson 1.0, Councilmember Wadden, and we had talked about master builders. So when we were together on the Affordable Housing Task Force, I remember that master builders came in and they did an excellent presentation for us. Boy, it'd be really great to see that again because I remember him saying that he was even doing an abbreviated version of it because we didn't have a lot of time. But that was a wonderful presentation. So I absolutely to answer the question. Ultimately, I'd like to see a presentation, but two, I think the city administrator makes a great point that we do need to start cranking out on those FAQs as well. So I'll speak for myself, and we'll definitely hear from the rest of the committee. But I definitely would like to see a presentation, even if it's from master builders, on just what the different options are out there.
Did you have a previous presentation from Master Builders?
We did. Oh boy, this was like 2 years ago. Councilmember Wadden,
Mhm.
we had a presentation from Master Builders, and it was just a really comprehensive presentation around what's available for affordable housing and things communities should consider for when thinking about building various options for affordable housing. I'm going to go with Councilmember Johnson because he raised his hand. Councilmember Johnson.
Just one thing is, I wonder if there was any need to go through the FAQs in that particular order, because I feel like the first one is like, I don't know. But there are other ones further down that I feel like we could probably tackle a little bit more easily. So I wonder if perhaps maybe I could work with Councilmember Washington or something to just kind of reorder them so that we could talk about some things that might be a little bit easier to answer sooner. So you can maybe make a little bit more progress.
Or we could just follow the list and you can go pass.
Fine
Just go back around.
too.
Yeah.
Either way works for me.
So 14. I mean, yeah. I mean,
So like number 7,
Okay.
I feel like is an example of something that we could probably get a good estimate and say, okay, if the purpose is this is for building an FRQ for that particular site that we've been talking about for the last X number of months, I think that we have a general idea of kind of the minimum that we might want.
Yeah. So it kind of
As
looks,
an example.
yeah, it kind of looks like just kind of looking at this list, it looks like the second half of the questions are more specific, right? Whereas the
Right.
1 through 6 are kind of more general. So maybe if we can get to some of the more granular points, we have a broader understanding, more strategic, in a strategic sense of what we're looking for.
Right. Yeah, and like the city retaining ownership or not, like, oh man, that
Yeah, well, it would depend on,
it depends on X, Y, and Z
well,
and stuff. And maybe
absolutely.
if we knew some of these other things, that would make it a little bit easier for us to figure out some of those.
What are your thoughts on that, Director?
Well, I wanted to mention, we have the permanent housing needs from King County that we're supposed to be looking at trying to acquire. So With our reduced growth targets, we have 0 to 30% is like the high priority. And that's a little over 600 units, kind of split between permanent supportive and non-permanent supportive, 117 units at the 30 to 50%, 16 at the 50 to 80%, which is, I think, what we were looking at for workforce housing. But then when we heard the finance director's presentation at the last meeting, it was pretty clear that we had to stay under 60% to utilize our REAP funding. So, do you all know what the difference is between permanent supportive housing and non-permanent supportive housing? Because that's something, I mean, I think we could, I'm happy to provide those numbers, just so you have them in front of you with the AMI percentages, if you would find that helpful.
I think I have a general understanding of it, but I think the more color you can provide to it, honestly, would be great for the committee.
Okay.
Councilmember Watkins, you had a question pending or a
I'm
comment?
in deep thought.
Okay, well, we'll let you, let me know when you're ready. But yeah, I think, just again, yeah, providing some color for the committee for it.
Okay.
Councilmember Watton.
Okay, my initial brush stroke is this. I think that addressing the 30% AMI is going to be most achievable with senior housing because we have the local resources for it. I think venturing beyond that is going to be challenging because of the things that you brought up. And we do have Snoqualmie Valley transportation as a method to get people around, which is okay when you have time to do that. It's not the frequency that's going to be required of other types of 30% and under. I don't think that the services that we need including like childcare is something that we're going to be able to address effectively. I think we're going to find that our resources are going to be incredibly stressed. And I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I'd rather meet people where they're at. And I think that that's probably, the easiest lift. Obviously, it's not going to be 600 units at 30%. It may be a fraction of that. That's kind of the reality, and that's the disconnect between the state GMA planning and the reality of what the community knows and has capacity for. So, yeah, that's my perspective on it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a valid concern. It's a challenge for our community. Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, I think that, I don't think that we have answered this question yet, but I think it needs to be answered before we can get into much of anything is, do we want that particular site? Do we want to put that in the category of, we want to really target that 30% AMI? Or is it that we want to target the higher income workforce housing, the 60% to even 80% AMI? I think if we answer that, then some of this starts to become a little bit clearer. And I'm not sure that I am prepared to answer that right now. I think I need to do some thinking about it before I say which way I want to go. But I do think that we might have to make that decision before I move on.
City Administrator Chambliss.
So I realize you're talking about in the near term, but in the.
I'm thinking like for the FRQ, for that
I
side.
understand.
Yeah.
But next year, the work plan is going to be to do the zoning, and we're going to have to, or we get sideways with the state.
That's right.
Identify the locations for all of that. So I would encourage you to think about all of it now, not to the point of distraction, but be thinking about that also as we're going through this exercise, because that is work that we have coming down the pipe that we're gonna need to do also.
So I'm just going to ask a quick question. I'll come right back to you, Councilmember Johnson. So this question is for the Director and City Administrator. So we've been tasked with I think it's 719 units for affordable housing. Now, with that task, have they decided on what the bands are, 0 to 30% AMI? What does that look like?
Yes, so 719 total units.
Okay.
And then 374 of those units would be non-permanent supportive housing. 244 units would be permanent supportive housing in the 0 to 30% category.
Mhm.
117 units from 30 to 50%, 16 units from 50 to 80%.
Okay. So sounds like it's heavier on the 0 to 30% AMI for
Yes.
non-supportive and supportive housing, or not, sorry, non-supportive permanent housing?
Non-permanent supportive housing and permanent supportive housing.
Okay.
So non-permanent supportive housing is like emergency shelters, that type of thing.
And you combine both of those numbers and it sounds like 600
Mhm.
units roughly.
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Watt.
So non-supportive permanent housing, permanent extremely low income housing.
Mhm.
If I'm not mistaken, that would also be low barrier of entry. Or am I misinterpreting that, Attorney Burke? Which would mean there would not be any requirements of persons' conditions. And there wouldn't be support for those unique conditions. Is that true?
Sorry, can you
Or-
say the first part again?
Unsupportive, very low income housing, because I can think of some examples in the metropolitan areas where it has had serious concerns health-wise for those residents. Maybe we'll come back
I
to
would need to
that.
come-
I
I would
don't
need
want
to-
to put you on
yeah,
the
I don't
spot, but
wanna-
I think we need to have a better understanding of what that truly means. Because that could put, I mean, even 30 units would have an immense impact on our first responders. And we need to understand that better. And it may be a case of going back to the state and saying, these are just unreasonable numbers.
Try again.
Yeah,
Well-
this is what it really means.
The other piece, and I'll be
Yeah.
right over to you, Councilmember Johnson. The other piece, Director, that is a concern, definitely and a challenge, is the piece that Councilmember Wadden spoke about, the services. And that's, if I just recall from the presentation we had for Master Builders, they did a really good job of kind of going through and speaking to different properties in terms of, okay, these are the services typically that are needed for this band of AMI. And I think if we're going to do that, just for location, we really need to start getting a really good understanding of what are some of the services that we would need to partner with or provide as a city for this particular band of AMI.
Mhm.
So again, another reason to have someone like, doesn't have to be Master Builders, but someone like Master Builders to come in and be able to kind of lay all that out for us to get a better understanding. Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, just in thinking a little more about the, do we target for the RFP?
RFP. Yeah.
RFP,
RFP,
okay.
yeah, you got
The 30% AMI versus some higher number, 30% or lower, is, it is hard to get away from the issue of parking. If what we wanted was 100 studio apartments, and then there are two people living in each of them, and they're each commuting to work by driving, that's like 200 new cars that are in a place that doesn't have a spot for 200 cars. So, yeah, we can't forget the fact, I wish that we could just have more buses, but wishing for more buses doesn't make them appear. So
No.
the fact is, if we go down that route, trying to take a huge chunk out of that state requirement, we are gonna run into parking problems. It's just a fact. Yeah, I still have to think about which route I want to go down and what kind of a split I think that I would want.
Yeah,
Comment, Councilman
and
Quinn?
I totally agree on the parking. We have to have 1-to-1 at least, and.
A
and
minimum,
It
yeah.
will also dictate on other things too, and we have to keep in mind, whenever we're talking about affordable housing, the impact fees for the schools, there are none.
Mhm.
And so we need really to have a rich dialogue with the school district, because we've already gone through that. And even though it says, there's more of a need for 4 and 5 bedroom houses, housing units, it will mean more kids. And that's kind of the reality. How do we mitigate? So we need to find the right place to land. So I think we need to go back, and if we can engage our largest employers to say, hey, will you help us with a survey so that those that are commuting in, how many would be willing to relocate here ultimately, because we have the housing here. Here's the good thing is that if people work locally, well, they're going to cut down their commute. The bad thing is this: we can't restrict people that work in Issaquah or Seattle from moving into those units too. So we kind of have to thread that needle, because there's simply no bus service. And the reality is, goes back to Councilmember Johnson's, is we're going to have more parking than what the state would like us maybe to have. And it's just the reality until we get more bus service. Or the other is, we get bus service to where those transit-oriented developments are that have the frequency, and be able to get those people here to work. And that's the other side of the coin. And maybe that's the easier thing to address, is not from the standpoint of King County, because they have their own, methodology for Metro, but we do need to find that happy place where, we're accommodating our workforce. No.
Maybe something like creative, think outside the box. Like if you were building a senior housing project,
Mhm.
for example, maybe you provide affordable housings for the providers for the care of the seniors. So what I'm hearing from talking with people that, work at the senior center, for example, is that there are state workers that are only paid $23 an hour, and they can't afford to live in Snoqualmie to take care of the seniors that need care. And so many times the seniors aren't able to get care that they need under the Medicare, Medicaid, I'm not sure, program. But if you had designated housing for that purpose as part of the services that could be provided, I mean, maybe that's something we could explore. That's probably a Dina question. Like, can we designate certain kinds of housing for that resource? Just like designate housing for the school district employees, for example, that work at the school district that are on the lower band of AMI. Can we build facilities and actually designate that housing for that purpose?
Follow up, please.
And we may want to take a look at Kirkland. They were exploring this about 3 years ago for their employees and school district employees. And I don't know how far along the road they got on addressing that very issue.
I know that's a big thing in places like Vail, Colorado, where, they have all the seasonal workers that come in and work, but then there's no housing there. So cities like that have done the same thing.
Councilmember Johnson?
Gonna go a little off script here and just say, hopefully some of the commuting for some of our workers that are commuting in just got a lot easier though.
Hmm.
Highway 18 looks great.
It's good to hear.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Chair. I think I've got a lot to think about.
Yep, I think we all do. So I think
Good reading.
the question that you ask, Director Davis, next steps, I think would definitely be tackling the FAQs in our next meeting. But I would ask, as you and City Administrator creatively think of different organizations we can partner with, having them come in for a presentation is just as kind of we get our arms around all of this, because you can see it's a lot. So,
Okay.
okay.
Sounds like a good plan.
Thank you so much, Director Davis. I know this is a heavy lift, but you've done wonderfully as usual. So thank you so much for your hard work. Any other questions for this committee?
I don't have any today, but thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay. All right, looks like so if there's no further business to come before this committee, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we are adjourned at 6:56.